Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk about these hills that I started a while back, and I just wanted to finish up the hills and kind of do the last video for those hills. These are 15 millimeter hills. I use these for my Flames of War campaigns, and you can use them for a variety of 15 millimeter stuff. They also work as small hills for say 28 millimeter things also, but this is the size I use typically in my Flames of War battle stuff. But anyway, today what I'm going to show you is how to take your blank hills that we've built out of foam, and the piece of PVC on the bottom, this is foam, and we've put sand, we shaped it, we put glue and sand and rock on it, and then we dry brushed it and painted it to be this. And we're going to turn this into that with a little bit of flocking material is what you call it, or that's what I call it. So I'm just going to quickly show you how to take the plain hill that you've painted already and based and all that and turn it into a finished product that just needs top coat. And so let's kind of go over the few things that we're going to need for today's project. One is I'm going to start, of course, with my massive cup of water. I'm going to use a tile. Once again, this is a ceramic 4-inch tile that has a gloss finish on it so that I can just quickly do glue and then be able to wash it back off. Next, I'm going to have my handy dandy paper towel. And then, of course, we're going to use two different adhesives. These are the white school glue that I use sometimes, and the construction like wood glue that we use also. I will probably use this one more than I'll use the white glue, but both will work. If I'm doing a base on a miniature, I'm more than likely going to use this material, the white glue, and if I'm doing terrain, I tend to use this one. Lastly, we'll go over the flocking material. One is I have this big flocking material that, like in this piece, you can see I put around this edge just to kind of give it a depth to the shape of the hill. So I have two different colors that I'm going to use today of this kind of fluffy flocking material. And then I also have just regular static grass. And I call it static grass because it's kind of fibrous, little bitty hairs of green material. And what happens is when you glue and you shake this on to the glued areas, it'll actually stand up like grass. I know it'll be kind of hard to see, but you can see this is actually, standing upright on that surface. I don't know if you can see it as well as I can in person, but it's raised up and it actually looks like a patch of grass. So that's what we're going to do today to get started. And next, I'll be getting the space set up with some brushes so that we can start, painting on the glue and adhering the flock. Okay, last piece of tech here is I'm just going to use a sheet of paper as the material catcher for the static grass or the flocking as I'm working, just because it's easier to get it back into the pile or back into the tub that I'm using, and I'll show you that trick. What I've done here is I've put just a little bit of glue, the yellow construction adhesive, out on, the wood glue out on the tile. I'm going to add some water to it just because I want it to be a certain consistency when it goes on. And just like in this piece that's finished, we're just going to add some rounded areas that kind of look organic onto the surface of this hill in 4 or 5 spots, just for the static grass. And you don't have to be fancy, and you certainly don't have to be very thick with the paint because this is going to work really well. You do have to work just a little bit fast because you don't want this glue to dry at all. That's why I add the water. And I'm going to do one that's kind of going from the surface of the hill to the base. And that looks pretty good to me. Might add one more just right there. And just keep your patterns as organic as possible. It should work out. I'm just rinsing my brush. before we move on to the static grass, and I'm going to move that to the edge just so no static grass gets in that glue. All right, so this piece, I'm just going to shape this material onto these wet glue areas. Cover them pretty good. I don't want them to be uncovered at all. It'll look like I'm putting out a ton, but that's okay because a lot of this is going to get reclaimed back into my tub here in just a minute. See, it looks like I shook out almost all of it, but what'll happen is I'm just going to let that sit for just a second, and then I'm going to knock off what didn't stick. And you can see the spots. Now you'll see that you can kind of transparently see the color of the glue through these surfaces, but as this dries, that'll clearly be green spots just like this that you don't see the glue material behind it. It just looks that way when it's wet. And right here, I can kind of see a pile of glue just a little bit. So I'm gonna tap just a bit more onto that spot there. If you see any weak spots, just work back into them like that. So I'm gonna set this to the side. Now this is why I'm using the piece of paper, is I take my tub, I just work all my static grass back into the container. And then I do the next one. I add just a little bit more glue. And add a bit more water with my brush. And granted, I can't use this water for anything else now that I put glue in it. It'll just make all your other brushes gross and like jammed up, and you don't want that. Now in this one here, I noticed that a rock fell off on that one spot. So I definitely want to cover that up with the static grass. And once again, I'm just gonna put 4 or 5 organic shapes here. Nothing crazy. And it will work pretty quickly. All right, rinse out my brush. I know I'm repeating these things, but I want to make sure that I don't miss any opportunity to kind of show you everything that I'm doing, because I don't want it to be a mystery for you. Once again, I'm going to shake this static grass back out. I'm going to let it sit there, and I see a little spot there. One right there, and one right there. Okay. Now that I've kind of covered that up well, I'll let it sit for a second. And you can kind of see there is a spot like right here at the edge. I'm just tapping into those areas where there's thicker glue. Once again, you see the spots and how it looks. And then I'm quickly on to the next one. All right, and I will probably speed up this footage for the last two so you don't have to hear my voice as I work through this. Okay, now that I have finished the static grass on these, I need to add this bit of flocking to the bases also. So now I'm going to work through each one. The difference in this process that we're about to do is I don't want to use the brush as much as I do the nozzle of the glue, because you want this glue to be just a little thicker when you're putting it on, because we're just going to stick it into cracks and crevices along a couple of the edges and sides of these bases. And on this one, I'm going to show you using the two different types of material. Now this material here is a little greener and the other one's a little bit more olive. I want to break it down into the smaller pieces so it's not so clumpy. And I would just work this in to that little strip of glue so that it just looks like it's organically on the base. And it's okay, like on this piece here, you see how a little glue is on the top? Like I said, this glue will end up being pretty transparent, so you won't see things like that. The difference with this process compared to the other process is I don't really want to violently shake this stuff off of the piece. I want to actually leave it like that so it'll dry and be okay. Now I'm going to set this color to the side, and then I'm going to get my pale color, my olive color here, stick it in on this side. I think that adding 2 or 3 colors of flocking to a base makes it look really nice. Some people only use 1 or 2, and on miniature bases, it probably doesn't matter as much as it does on terrain. But when you're playing with terrain, especially stuff that's like Flames of War, you know, it's happening in the real world. There's no pieces of terrain that have like 1 color of terrain flocking. It's usually going to be varied, just like our backyards. You know, no lawn is exactly green. There's a lot of different colors in it, unless you're on a golf course or something like that. So I'm just going to work into this next piece. And do the same process. And I'm letting you see the whole process with all of these pieces of terrain, because I want you to get a feel for how long it takes me to do this part of it, because so many times people go, well, I don't really make terrain for my tabletops at home because A, it takes too much time, and B, I don't know how to do it. Well, that's what this channel is all about. I want to show you easy ways to get this done, that it doesn't take a whole lot of time, and that you can do this stuff with pretty simple materials. This flocking, you know, I just picked up at my local hobby store. You know, that there's always online or in your local store, they have this flocking material, and you just need to buy, you know, a reasonable amount. I think these bags of the big flocking, let's stick into my fingers now. There we go. Were these Woodland Scenics. You know, this isn't a very big bag. It's about the size of my heel. It's not a huge bag. And the tub is just, you know, a decent sized tub. This is only about 2.5 inches or so. So it's not like I spent tons and tons of money on flocking material to get this done. It was pretty simple and not super expensive. down to my last piece here. This one doesn't have as much as an edge where things can go, so I'm really only going to add just a little bit to this one. It'll have the least amount of it, and I'll probably just do it the one color. I'll probably just do the olive, just because it doesn't have as much as that edge as some of the others do. And you could totally, I know I'm kind of being, hey, only use this color and that color. You could mix these colors in these strips. You could do both colors mixed together. And I'll do that in this next little section so you kind of see that. That is not holding well, so I'm gonna add just a little bit more glue to that little spot. But sometimes what you can do is make your own blends. And I'm just gonna mix these two together, you know, and show you that. Sometimes when you mix things together like this, it looks a little bit better. Once again, it is not holding well on that spot. But mixing them together is completely doable and okay to do. All right, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set all this stuff aside and let this dry so that, you know, we can do the next step, which on these 4 pieces, since I just did this, I'll probably wait. I mean, at a minimum, you probably need to wait a couple of hours to make sure that glue is good and dry before you do the next step. I would let it stay overnight. That's what I'm gonna do in this situation. But we can talk just a little bit about the last piece here on the piece that is already, you know, ready to go and doesn't need dry time. So the last thing you would do with a piece like this is to coat it with a clear coat. Now I always use a matte finish clear coat. You know, there's multiple companies. Once again, your local hobby stores, you know, places like Games Workshop or somebody that carries Army Painter, they have these clear matte finishes. You should be doing your miniatures with them, and you definitely want to do your terrain with them. And after this glue has completely dried and you have your piece all finished and it looks the way you want it to do, I would clear coat that. And if you do it with a rattle can, you know, a spray can of clear coat, what you need to do is you need to make sure that you're outside, that you have good ventilation. Try not to do it inside. If you are going to do it inside, definitely wear respiratory protection. I never do it inside, even in a basement or a garage, just because it's dangerous. You know, the fumes are dangerous to you. Anytime you can do it outside, or at least with a garage with the door open or a fan in the window, better off for you. You know, make a spray booth if that's what you need to do to get those fumes away from you, because they're just dangerous for you. But definitely stay about 10 inches away. Keep the can moving the whole time. Never stop in one spot because it'll build up. But you just want a nice, even, you know, not very thick, a pretty thin coat. And every 6 to 8 months, if you're using your terrain pretty heavy, you need to recoat it. If you only use your terrain once a month, you know, 12 times a year, 15 times a year, you might get away with recoating it maybe every 1 to 2 years. But if you're in a shop or you're a TO at a tournament, you're probably going to have to do it every 6 months or so, and just regularly recoat with that clear coat. The other thing I'll say about clear coat is, or all spray paint in general when you're using it, is always keep the cans on the inside. You never want to get the can too cold or too hot, and you want it to be pretty even. You know, normal room temperature or a little hotter is okay. And you probably want to do it on a nice sunny day, not when it's raining. And let's see what other tips I can give you is, yeah, if the humidity's high, it's never going to go right. Primer, or if you've ever sprayed primer and it came out fuzzy, that's because you primed on a day when the humidity was high. Oh, and the other thing is make sure you shake the can up really, really well. Could you use a brush-on sealant on these, you know, like a matte finish sealant and brush it on? Yeah, but you might disturb some of this flocking stuff. You could brush it over the other material and it would be fine, but I always use a spray can. Anyway, I hope that helps. I'm glad you joined me for this project, and this is going to be a nice set of 15mm heels to fill out, you know, a Flames of War table. All right, talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.